All right, here we go. All right, Ray. So we have this merger that has fallen through for Honda, for Nissan, and it's almost funny to me that this is the situation because the big reason why it fell through is because Nissan did not want to be under Honda. And the thing about it is like Nissan had 8 to 12 months of operating cash left. So they were going to have Honda come in and save their butt. But they did not want to be under Honda, even though Honda was saving them. I don't so we're in a situation now that Nissan might not make it because they don't want to be bailed out by someone and then not be equals with the person who is saving their butt.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. Typically, when somebody needs to save your ass, you're already not equals. Because if you were equals, you wouldn't need to have your ass saved. Just between you and me. I mean that, but what's really happened now is it just boils down to ego, and the good folks at Nissan who have basically run the company into the ditch. Just their egos won't allow them to say, "Hey, we basically ran the company into the ditch," and so since they don't want to admit that, they don't want to have to take direction from Honda, telling them how it is and what it is they need to do in order to survive and be part of Honda. So to me, it's just I understand human nature. And human nature says that people that run multi-billion-dollar companies never want to admit that they were wrong, and so they can't. And they're certainly not going to admit it to somebody that's saying, "Hey, we will bail you out if you admit it." We got nothing to admit here, uh, and so it's a clash of egos, unfortunately.
Yeah. So another big hold up here was that Honda wanted Nissan to ditch their hybrid technology
Yeah.
and in lieu of using Honda's technology. And I want to scroll down here and show you a comment right here. And this is from Honda. It says, it is obvious that we are a little better than Nissan when it comes to hybrids. So this is you're absolutely talking about ego here, where Nissan felt like their technology was good enough to stay. But if you look at the market, if you look at what people are actually buying, it seems pretty obvious to me that whatever Honda wants to implement into Nissan's technology, Nissan needs to be like, yes, you know what, big brother, you do it, please, we need help.
Well, the reality of the situation is that the hybrid powertrains that Nissan developed and use in Japan work great in Japan because there's not a lot of highway driving or high speed driving. They're good for city driving. Nissan's hybrids get terrible highway mileage. Honda's hybrids get good highway mileage and great city mileage. So if your biggest market is going to be North America, where I don't know, we have a lot of super highways here where people drive really, really fast. You would think you would want to be able to cater to that market, which is why we really haven't seen any Nissan hybrids in this country because they won't work here. So, yeah, you would think that Nissan and the good folks that run Nissan would get that. And why? I mean, I get okay that they've already it's a sunk cost. They've already invested $2 billion in research, development, and everything of the hybrid systems that they have now at Nissan. You ain't never getting that money back. If it's a bad system, it's a bad system. If there's a better system that you could use that would allow you to bring your hybrids to the United States quicker, then just realize that 2 billion's gone and move on and jump on board with Honda.
So I got a hot take here because let's
Okay.
see here about What, 2 to 3 months ago, we had Nissan that was about 10 to 12 months until they were out of operating cash or whatever. So now we have 2 months later. So now Nissan was in emergency mode. This is
Yeah.
from their CEO. Now they're even in more emergency mode because they got to figure out something. I don't know if it's panic mode. I don't know what comes after emergency mode
DEFCON.
yeah,
DEFCON.
in the lineage of YouTube title words.
Yes.
But my hot take is that Honda and Nissan still get this merger done, but it might just be that it's negotiated in a different way, and maybe Nissan gets a little bit more than what they thought they were actually going to get, because Nissan is going to run out of options, and they're just not going to let the company go bankrupt.
Negotiations always take many turns. Whether it's a sports star trying to negotiate with the team that they play for, 1 minute it looks like there's going to be a deal. The next minute, the guy's demanding a trade. And then 30 minutes later, the guy just signs this massive deal and says, I never really wanted to go anywhere anyway. And I don't think a situation like this, when it comes to two giant corporations, is any different than that athlete. There's going to be twists and turns. There's going to be days where they're on the same page, and they're both extolling each other's virtues. And then there's going to be days where they hate each other, and they're going to tell the world we hate each other. And then they're going to say we're not even interested in each other anymore. And then lo and behold, it's like they're going to run into each other at a bar one night, and they're going to go, I really miss you. And maybe we should talk. And they'll talk, and they'll find some common ground again. Because I don't see anybody else coming to save their ass.
And that's the thing. And the deal might just continue to get better for Honda as we get later on in this year. Because I can tell you, I look at all these Nissan dealers and they're not moving in the right direction, and they have to be turning down allocation, which I've learned since I've talked to a franchise manager at Nissan, is one of my buddies. They don't have, at least in the Southeast, they don't have this allocation system where they're being shoved cars. He actually has an ordering system where when he sells some cars, he can then reorder some more. But he's not reordering until he actually sells his cars. So if you have all these dealers that are not moving these vehicles, then they're not reordering. Nissan knows it's bad. And this is why we see the stair step program, while we see Nissan giving more money to dealers that take more Muranos, more than they have recently, and then why they're giving them more money on the back end if they meet their sales goals. And what my buddy said was, they can give money on the back end for hitting 90% of the sales goals, but these sales goals are just a joke anyway. So whenever they say, okay, we'll give you an extra $1,500 if you hit 100%, and we'll give you $3,000 per if you hit 110%, he's like, I'm just going to laugh at that. I'm just going to try to sell some used cars is what I'm going to try to do.
Well, because in many, that I spent the vast majority of my career running new car departments. And it would never cease to amaze me when you would have a sales objective set by the manufacturer for whatever sales goal they're setting for you on a stair-step program. And you look at their objective, and let's say the objective was 100 new cars in February. And you look at February of the previous year when you did 66 cars, and you go, okay, if I projected 10% growth year over year, which I think most businesses would be happy with. So 10% of 66 would be 6.6 units. Let's round it up, call it 7. So if I do 10% more this year, I should do 73 cars, not 100. So, where does the 100 come from? They just pull it out of their butts. They give you an objective that is so ridiculous, that is so far beyond any reasonable expectation for growth in a month, that yes, that Nissan manager that looks at it and says, yeah, we're just going to sell used cars, because there's no way we can hit this objective, because the objective is not based in reality.
All right. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. It would really help us out. Me and Ray need all the help that we can get. So please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching.
And I encountered that every year, because would you like your business to go up 10% month over month, year over year? Would you be happy with that?
Absolutely.
Do you really think that, would you project that your business should go up, I don't know, 34, 35% month over month, year over year?
Yeah, probably not.
Would if you saw something like that, would you think, who the hell's going to hit that? And the only way you hit that is to lie, cheat, and steal. And what do I mean by that? Well, okay, if you sold 66 new cars last February and they want you to sell 100 this year, how many do you think you're selling to your employees? At least on paper. Not literally selling to your employees, but on paper you're saying you did.
Yeah, the owner's wife, she's bought like 5 or 6 Nissans this past month. Yeah,
because she loves them. She just loves them. So
she keeps crashing the damn things.
What do you? They're not legitimate sales goals that get set up. And so if a dealer is planning on hitting them, he's not going to hit them legitimately. There's going to be a lot of fraud involved. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it, where I've seen the manufacturer come in and audit dealerships. And I told you that when I was at Acura, the one thing in the Penske organization is they want you to be number one in your market. And it's a publicly traded company. You can't lie about what you sold. You can only report what you sold. And so I knew in my heart of hearts most months that I outsold my competitor, but I also knew in my heart of hearts that I couldn't out RDR my competitor, because they would report things sold that weren't, so that they could look like they were the market leader. And that's fraud. And that's the type of stuff that goes on when they set up these ridiculous objectives that realistically nobody should be able to hit. And if they do, the only way they're hitting him is because they're fabricating deals that don't exist.
So I went to his dealership the other day, and like on some Pathfinders, he had like $7,000 and $8,000 off MSRP. I've seen invoice pricing.
Yeah,
I've seen what they're at least on paper what they're bringing them in for. They're not making any money on those Pathfinders if they're selling them out. Did you ever get to a situation at any of your dealerships you worked at where it almost didn't matter how low you lowered the price? There were still just not buyers there.
Of course. Perfect example, Acura RL. It was like, nobody was coming. You could have 2 Acura RLs in inventory, and you had a 365-day supply of stock. Okay? Because it would take you a year to sell those 2. So it was like there was no price in most cases where a customer was going to say yes to that car. The infamous Acura SLX, which was a rebadged Isuzu Trooper. It was an Albatross. It was an Anchor. I remember we got one in one day, and a customer came in and made a ridiculous offer. So ridiculous, I believe we lost $500 or $5,500 to sell the car. And the GM and the area vice president looked at the offer and looked at the customer and said, "You just bought yourself an SLX." Because they knew it was just going to sit. Just take the loss now. Just get rid of it. Don't be paying floor plan on it. Just get rid of it.
But how many of those did you have at the time that you knew they just weren't going to move?
It had just come in. We knew how long it took to sell the previous ones.
Okay, so you only had one there.
Yeah.
With these Nissan dealers, like they have 36 Rogues, they have another 20 Pathfinders. They've got these all these other vehicles, the
Yeah.
Muranos that are just not moving. So my question to you is like, there's got to be a line in the sand where they're like, we can't lower it that much. So what I mean, are like their hands are tied. Is
Are
that's
they?
a rough situation to be in, I would assume.
Well, it is a rough situation, but are their hands tied? I mean, people won't say yes to something until the amount you're asking for it is less than what the customer perceives the value of it to be. So, if nobody's buying it at X, then maybe you have to lower it to Y to get somebody to go, okay, I'll take it. Your hands aren't tied. This stuff isn't going up in value as it sits. It's not like a fine wine. It doesn't age well. Okay? Cars don't age well. They fall apart. They, lot rot, dents, dings, flat spots on tires, rodents nesting in engine compartments. It the longer the stuff sits, the more expensive it gets for you to be able to sell it because of all the stuff you now have to fix when the customer finally says, okay, I'll take it. Batteries go dead. It's just so, as much as you want to think, okay, my hands are tied, they're not. It's you have to look at it and go, ultimately, what do I think it's going to take to sell this product, whatever it may be? And if ultimately you say to yourself, well, I'm going to be willing to lose $6,000 in order to get rid of it, well, then why not just take that $6,000 loss today if you know that's ultimately what you're going to do? Because nobody's going to want to buy it. So you take whatever you can get on the front end. You hope you have strong people in the finance and insurance office that can convince somebody to buy some protection packages, dent and ding repair, tire and wheel, lost key fob replacement, whatever. You hope that they can sell them some stuff, an extended warranty, prepaid maintenance, whatever it is. You hope that they can mark up the loan rate, and I guess more than anything, you hope that they can get the customer financed, and you take whatever that profit is to mitigate whatever that loss was, and then you hope parts and service can keep them as a customer and make some additional money that way. But to think that your hands are tied when they're not, the only reason your hands are tied is because you're tying them. You're thinking, well, I can't take this loss. Guess what? You're going to anyway.
And how weak is that negotiation process from the sales manager's side?
Well, most sales managers, they like to act tough in the beginning, but sometimes I used to say to salespeople, the customer was offering some number, and I would say, okay, go back at this number, try and get a few dollars more. And if you can't, just fold like a cheap suit. Well, I can assure you that in most cases, they didn't even try to get the other money. They just folded like a cheap suit. I mean, initially, the sales manager might be tough, but the sales manager realizes the situation they're in. And so at a certain point, they're just going to fold like a cheap suit. And they're going to, it takes effort on behalf of the customer, but it's effort well spent on savings. So, yeah.
I remember this was probably the same situation that my wife and myself dealt with when we went and bought her a van, a Honda van. I mean, my goodness, how long has that been now? Have we had it a year? I don't know if it's been. Anyway, sat down at the sales desk with the person. We went back and forth. There was like 2 pencils, I think.
Yeah.
And we were at the end. We were like $500 apart. I knew I wanted 10% off MSRP, and that's what I was going to pay, or I wasn't going to do it. And we got to where we were $500 apart, and he laid the paper down and said, okay, I got you good news. We're just $500 apart. If you can do this, we'll do it. And I was like, man, you know what? I'll come up $200. He said, okay, deal. So I probably could have got my $200 off, but I'm assuming the sales manager told him the same exact thing. If they're going to leave, then just give it to them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you are, when you sell things for a living, you haven't accomplished anything with a customer if you let them leave without whatever it is you're selling. Other than you've wasted some time, theirs and yours. There's no reward for letting somebody leave without the product. There's no commission on that. I remember the owner of the mini store that I used to work at, and he used to say, well, I don't think we should discount our minis. And my response always was, well, you need to explain that to our competitors, because they think we should, and they do. And until you change my pay plan to pay me more for not selling these things, then I'm going to discount them to sell them, because otherwise I can't make any money. So I don't know too many dealers that are paying you not to deliver something. So, your friend at the Nissan dealer just has to realize that. It might not be a fat deal, might be a really crappy deal, but it's a deal, and you've relieved yourself of one piece of inventory. You created another customer who might tell friends and family about how good of a deal they got, might refer people to you. There are so many other opportunities that could come from this, but there are no opportunities to come from it when you let the customer leave without your product. They're not sending anybody in.
Yeah, and I think he said that he's been on top of his inventory about the last 2 months. There was a time frame, maybe 6 months ago. He was saying that he was telling Nissan that he was going to have to back off of what he was taking in. But when I went and saw him again just not too long ago, he said that they were back in control of their inventory, whatever that means. But that probably means he backed off. He was able to sell through some, and I think they're a good dealership, and they move through at least the vehicles that they need to. And he's pivoting to be able to go to the places where he can actually make money. And the one big thing he said was, okay, service, dock fee. He's going to be able to make it up somewhere else, but he's not going to be able to make it up on the cars.
Well, an average dock fee today, probably across this country, is approaching $700, $800, $900. In Florida, we know dock fees are anywhere from like $1,000 to $1,500. So it becomes easier to take a nothing deal on the front if you have $1,000 dock fee. Well, that $1,000 absolutely offsets $1,000 worth of loss. So you can't collect the dock fee if you don't sell something. So that's the part that managers often forget. They get stubborn. Egos are involved. They don't want to lose. Their ego says, we have to beat the customer. And the reality is, nobody has to beat anybody. It just has to be a win-win. The salesperson needs to be happy. The sales manager needs to be happy. The customer needs to be happy. And if all those parties can be happy, well, then you're going to have a car deal. And if they're not, you're not going to. But it's incumbent upon the sales manager to figure out a way to not let the customer leave without a vehicle, because he's doing an injustice to the dealer who he works for, in my opinion.
And it seems like with specifically these Nissan dealers and the Stellantis dealers, they would almost rather sell the. I know they have to get cars off their floor plans. They want to sell new cars, but they would almost rather sell a consumer a used vehicle because that dock fee that they're already getting on these new vehicles and they weren't making any money on the new vehicles. Well, they can get that same dock fee on the used vehicles, but they're making money on the front end, they're making money on the back end, they're making money dock fee, and they can still obtain some service from that vehicle too. So I would think 100 out of 100 times would rather sell a bunch of those used vehicles than the new ones.
Absolutely. But you've heard me talk about this before. New car departments, in many, many instances, are not profitable. For the course of the year, they are not a profit center. They are in many cases, the least profitable department in the dealership. Finance and insurance, profitable. Used cars, profitable. Parts and service, profitable. New cars, marginally profitable, if profitable at all. So new cars is the loss leader to be able to create trade-ins, to be able to have a trade that you can sell to somebody as a used car, to create an opportunity for your finance and insurance office, to create an opportunity for your parts and service department. But it's not necessarily the opportunity for a big profit. New car departments just aren't nearly as profitable as most people think they are. They're just not, unfortunately. Hit the subscribe button and that like button, because nothing says we love you quite like liking us.